Marshall McLuhan saw it coming. The Canadian media theorist understood that technologies don't just carry messages, they fundamentally rewire human consciousness. When we add his insights to our understanding of cinema's role in shaping collective reality, something profound emerges. It's not just the stories films tell, but the very technology of cinema itself that transforms how humanity dreams together. The medium is the message, McLuhan famously declared. Applied to cinema, this means the mythic power of movies doesn't primarily come from their plots or characters, but from the medium's unique properties. The darkened room, the overwhelming scale, the fusion of sight and sound, the collective yet individual experience. These technological features shape consciousness in ways that would make Jung's collective unconscious operate differently in the age of film than in the age of oral storytelling. Think about the cinema's technological apparatus. The projector beam cutting through darkness like a modern campfire, the screen serving as a communal mirror, the synchronization of hundreds of nervous systems in shared attention. These aren't merely technical details, they're the architecture of a new form of collective consciousness. The darkness itself is crucial. It dissolves individual boundaries, creating what McLuhan might have called a retribalized space where separate selves merge into a collective sensory experience. Consider the difference between reading a myth in a book and experiencing it in a cinema. The book is cooler. It requires imaginative participation, each reader creating their own mental images. Cinema provides the images ready-made, at superhuman scale and intensity. This isn't better or worse than literature. It's a fundamentally different technology of consciousness, one that works more like dreaming than reading. In dreams, we don't construct images. They appear to us fully formed, carrying meanings that bypass rational analysis. Here's where it gets fascinating. McLuhan believed each new medium creates what he called acoustic space, a field of simultaneous relationships rather than linear connections. Cinema creates a unique form of acoustic space where past, present and future collapse, where cause and effect blur, where the mythic and mundane intersect. This is the perfect technological environment for what Mitch Horowitz would recognize as co-creative reality to flourish. Acoustic space, as McLuhan conceived it, is the opposite of visual space. Visual space is linear, sequential, logical, the space of written language and rational thought. Acoustic space is all at once, multi-directional, intuitive, the space of the oral tradition and mythic consciousness. Cinema paradoxically uses visual technology to create acoustic space. Through editing, sound design and the immersive environment of the theatre, films create a field of simultaneous impressions rather than sequential arguments. McLuhan's concept of extension is crucial here. He saw all media as extensions of human faculties. The wheel extends the foot, the book extends the eye, electronic media extend the central nervous system. Cinema extends something even more fundamental, our capacity to share visions. In pre-literate societies, shamans and storytellers served this function, inducing shared visionary states through ritual and narrative. Cinema democratizes and industrializes this shamanic function, making it available on demand to millions simultaneously. This extension comes with what McLuhan called amputation. When we extend a faculty through technology, we also numb or forget the original capacity. As cinema extends our collective dreaming function, we may lose touch with more organic forms of shared visioning. Yet, this amputation also creates new possibilities. The industrial scale of cinematic myth-making allows for global coordination of imagination in ways previously impossible. McLuhan predicted the global village, a world where electronic media would create a new form of tribal consciousness. Cinema was arguably the first global medium, creating shared mythologies across cultures. When billions watch the same Marvel movie, they're not just consuming entertainment, they're participating in a technological ritual that shapes the global nervous system. The real magic happens in what McLuhan called the interval. That's the gap between figure and ground. In cinema, this interval exists between the screen and the audience, between individual and collective experience, and between the archetypal and the technological. This gap is where co-creative reality does its work, where the collective unconscious gets programmed and reprogrammed by the medium itself. The concept of figure and ground was central to McLuhan's thinking. In any medium, he argued, we tend to focus on the figure, meaning the content, while ignoring the ground, the medium itself, and its effects. In cinema, we focus on the story, the characters, the special effects, all those figures, but the ground, the darkened space, the collective attention, the technological apparatus, that's where the real transformation occurs. This interval or gap is a liminal space, a threshold between realities. It's in this space that the audience's consciousness merges with the film's consciousness, creating a third thing, a collective vision that exists neither solely on screen nor solely in individual minds. This is where Horowitz's co-creative reality operates most powerfully, where attention and imagination combine to shape not just perception but possibility itself. McLuhan warned that we become what we behold, that we shape our tools and then they shape us. Cinema has been shaping us for over a century, creating new forms of collective consciousness and new ways of processing myth and meaning. The question isn't whether we're being programmed, it's whether we understand the programming language. This reciprocal shaping is what McLuhan called the tetrad. Every medium simultaneously enhances, obsolesces, retrieves, and reverses aspects of human experience. Cinema enhances our capacity for shared vision while obsolescing certain forms of individual imagination. Understanding cinema's tetrad effects helps us grasp its role in shaping reality. By enhancing collective vision, it makes certain futures more likely, simply by making them more vividly imaginable. By obsolescing other forms of myth-making, it centralizes the power to shape collective dreams. By retrieving archaic modes of consciousness, it keeps ancient patterns alive in technological form. By reversing into fragmentation, it creates the conditions for new forms of media to emerge. When filmmakers understand they're not just telling stories, but operating consciousness-shaping technology, everything changes. When audiences recognize they're not just watching but participating in techno-magical rituals, everything changes. The cinema becomes a laboratory for engineering tomorrow's myths, tomorrow's possibilities, tomorrow's realities. This understanding transforms the filmmaker from entertainer to shaman, from artist to consciousness engineer. Directors like Stanley Kubrick, Andrei Tarkovsky, and David Lynch seemed to intuit this, creating films that worked less like narratives and more like consciousness-altering technologies. They understood that cinema's power lay not in telling stories about transformation, but in creating transformative experiences through the medium itself. Similarly, when audiences understand their role as co-creators rather than passive consumers, the cinematic experience becomes a form of collective magic. The attention of millions focused on the same archetypal images at the same moment creates what we might call a morphogenetic field, a pattern of consciousness that influences how reality unfolds. This isn't metaphorical, it's McLuhan's insight that media create environments, and environments shape possibility. McLuhan asked us to understand media as environments, not just channels. The cinematic environment, with its specific technological properties, creates unique conditions for collective reality creation. It's a space where the ancient shamanic function meets industrial technology, where archetypal patterns get amplified through electron beams and digital projection. The environmental nature of cinema extends beyond the theatre. Films create what McLuhan might have called anti-environments, artistic constructions that make visible the invisible environments we inhabit. By creating alternative realities on screen, cinema helps us see the constructed nature of our consensus reality. This seeing is the first step in conscious reality creation. The technological specifications of cinema, 24 frames per second, creating the illusion of motion, surround sound, creating immersive acoustic space, the scale of the image overwhelming human proportion. These aren't neutral. They create specific states of consciousness, specific modes of perception. The persistence of vision that makes cinema possible is itself a metaphor for how collective vision persists, shaping reality through sustained attention. We're living in the world cinema helped create, not just through the stories it told, but through the consciousness it shaped. Every new medium brings new possibilities for collective dreaming and reality creation. As we move into virtual and augmented reality, understanding cinema's role as consciousness technology becomes even more crucial. The shift from cinema to VR represents what McLuhan might have called a shift from mechanical to electric technology. Cinema, despite its electronic components, is fundamentally mechanical, a series of still images creating the illusion of motion. VR is fully electric, creating not representations of space but navigable spatial experiences. If cinema extended collective dreaming, VR extends collective lucid dreaming, the ability to consciously navigate and manipulate shared vision spaces. Understanding cinema's role as consciousness technology provides crucial wisdom for navigating these new media. The patterns established by a century of cinema, the grammar of visual storytelling, the rhythms of attention, the archetypal structures that resonate across cultures, form the foundation for whatever comes next. We're not leaving the cinematic age behind. We're deepening and expanding it into new dimensions. The question for our time, now that we're beginning to understand how these technologies shape collective reality, how do we use them consciously? How do we become gardeners of the collective unconscious rather than its unwitting subjects? This question becomes more urgent as media technologies become more immersive, more persuasive, more directly interfaced with human consciousness. McLuhan's insights suggest that the answer lies not in controlling content, but in understanding form. Not in censoring stories, but in comprehending how different media environments shape the possibilities for story itself. To become conscious participants in techno-mediated reality creation, we need to develop what McLuhan called pattern recognition, the ability to perceive the hidden ground of media effects. We need to understand not just what films say, but what cinema does. We need to recognize the ritual dimensions of media consumption, the mythic patterns embedded in technological form, and the ways attention and technology combine to create tomorrow's possibilities. The cinema, seen through McLuhan's lens, becomes a training ground for conscious reality creation. Each film is an experiment in collective visioning. Each viewing is a lesson in how technology and consciousness interact. Each shared experience in the dark is a rehearsal for the kinds of coordinated imagination our species will need to navigate the challenges ahead. The screen isn't just reflecting our dreams back to us, it's teaching us how to dream. And in a reality that responds to collective vision, learning to dream together consciously may be the most important skill we can develop. Cinema has been preparing us for this all along, not through its messages, but through its very existence as a medium. Now it's time to wake up inside the dream and take conscious control of the projector.